Good morning and welcome to Newsfile. This is your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. The anti-lgbtqi bill has got sponsors and supporters drawing swords, threatening brimstone and fire. The church and mosque will no longer accommodate those who vote against it. The exchanges have been as highly emotive as they have been bigotry, with opponents labeling it as unconstitutional, repressive, regressive, authoritarian, totalitarian, obnoxious, scaremongering, and hate in a fanatical crusade of intolerance and extremism. Embassies are getting damned for refusing visas to MPs, but have the sponsors been rushing to crash land as the majority leader in parliament affirms it imposes cost on the public purse and therefore must be surrendered to the Attorney General for the President and not private members to present to Parliament? In 2017, the NCA, National Communications Authority, took actions largely criticized, especially by the political opposition and free media lovers, as capricious, high-handed, and targeted at muting influential opposition voice, especially Radio Gold. It put up a spirited defense, insisting it needed to crack the whip on regulatory infractions, primarily long defaults in payments of fees and renewal of authorizations. Many not popular stations were also shut down, and the NCA was accused of looking for frequencies to hand to MPP people because the NDC had almost exhausted the finite product, handing licenses to undeserving sympathizers without the capacity to operate them. Today, let's understand the NCA's latest decision to issue 133 licenses, reviving some of those it collapsed. And also, it appears the world is set to face energy crisis in COVID. That's double trouble. But while China can't, get fuel, the UK only lacks drivers for the fuel tankers it has. In Ghana, the fuel price hike ritual seems to force the hand of government to remove some levies on the product. But shall we see 7% hike starting today? And what will that mean for your bowl of kenke, which has shrunk significantly in a while now? I'm Samson Ladi Anyanini. We'll be right back to deal with the Vex matters. Welcome back. This is Newsfile, it's your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here is Samson's take. Stop hurting with your bad attitude at work. I had been gathering material to write about the injustice causing needless pain and suffering to law students until a typical bad attitude of civil servants got me sad to change course. A poor pensioner who could have lived a little longer died in circumstances I can't but believe was avoidable. But I'm tired of this law school problem leaders fail to fix despite solutions known for more than a decade. Maxwell Opoku-Agyeman has documented the rather simple solutions we have ritually drummed into their ears over the period. He can resubmit them if they have forgotten about them. What is happening is an indictment on the leadership. 2,842 sat this year's exam. Please admit the 499 students who made the 50% advertised pass mark to join the 790 being admitted on a belated reset of rules, cutting them out. You started solving this problem the last time by admitting over 1,000 and running a triple track. Don't retrogress. Keep pace with the ever-expanding population. Remember, there are only 14 lawyers practicing in the upper region with 1.3 million people. Only 14 lawyers. And only 39 in total for the entire 5 regions of the north. Only 39. We have said enough, and this leadership failure must end, because the students are going through frustration and suicidal tendencies and thoughts. You don't have to put them through this. If you were to write such an exam to go into the law school, ask yourself if you would have been a lawyer by now. It's costly and it is exacting to study the law. Don't compound it for them. Already, there is a national security threat with unemployment, with young people who are leaving school with no jobs. This is where the jobs are secured. Let's not continue to frustrate these poor students this way. Now, to what made me sad. This lady and her family were introduced to me a couple of months ago. This was just about when the court was supposed to go on vacation. Now, her dad was seriously sick. It affected his brain and his speech. Her family needed to access his bank account with the UMB to cater for him after spending all they had on him. They had spent almost all they had on him while he was on admission. They got a power of attorney, they had been told, that would help to be able to access his bank accounts. It didn't work because the bank does not work with that. And the bank needed a court order appointing someone in the family as his guardian. The law dictates that. This is when I came in to do a free service, pro bono. So I spoke with the bank and discovered I had a colleague who was working there, and they told me this is what you needed, and they assisted how to do it quickly. So I prepared the documents, we filed them in the court. We sought a quick hearing, but someone at the registry didn't appreciate the urgency and got the case scheduled for a later date. Yeah, we had to manage, that's all we could. Well, I later argued the case before a rather helpful lady judge and got a grant, subject to an independent doctor's report or assessment, sort of a second report, as dictated by the law, on the current condition of the man. The court appointed state hospital, a state hospital, Kolebu. There must be a psychiatrist there to do the examination. To do that job, it took weeks to get the court officers to type out what could have been done in minutes to be sent to the Kolebu hospital. Took weeks with daily reminders to the court officials. Then back and forth with the Kolebu hospital. And after a month or so, after they had received this order, they then assigned a doctor, a psychiatrist, to do the assessment. Well, this sick man is not in Accra, he's in the eastern region. The doctors could not reach out to the doctors taking care of him there, and nobody could go there and take care of him. He must be brought to Accra by all cost. And that was a difficulty. Well, The sick man was physically brought to Accra to be examined. I thought that was best practice. That's what they required. But in this technological age, we can't innovate to avoid that. The man was brought last week, but could not be attended to fully because they were unable, according to them, to assess his cognitive functions because he was unwell and couldn't speak, unquote. But this is exactly a major part of his suffering. He was returned and brought back to the hospital this week. And this is the note I got, that unfortunately, just before the assessment, he started gasping for air and we lost him, unquote. And that made me sad. I feel this family's pain and I feel he just may have lived for a short while. Your attitude at your workplace, lack of urgency, and thinking it's a buying ejuma so you can't be concerned is bad. It hurts. So please stop it. Thank you very much. And that's my take. We get into the issues we discuss for you. And the show is brought to you by Bank of Africa, as strong as a group and close as a partner. MTN, everywhere you go. Ashasi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Robert and Sons, seeing is believing. Waylead, home is where one starts. Star Assurance, that's your solid partner. MG Auto Trading, official distributors of MG vehicles in Ghana. CBG, we stand with you. Fabri Metal, your partner in steel. And Rehoboth Properties. Now, I get to introduce my guest to you, and then we begin our discussion. So, you have followed all the debates about the LGBT or anti-LGBT bill. What exactly is in that bill? Have you read it? The academics, the professors who are also against it, you have been abusing and vilifying them. Have you read what they have put in their memorandum? It will shock you. I got people confessing this week. They are reading the bill for the first time after they've been asked to read it. And some have not read it at all, and they are talking as if they have. When we return, Professor Techua Manu, Professor Emerita, Institute of African Studies, University of Ghana, Legon, former Director, Social Development Policy Division, United Nations Economic Commissions for Africa, also former Director, Institute of African Studies at the University of Ghana, will join us. She's actually on Zoom with us. Roxanne Nelson Dafamapo, MP, Sardai, Member, Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs, Public Accounts, Standing Orders Committees of Parliament, the man who has been filing writs to the Supreme Court recently, challenging all the things that you love to see him challenge. Dr. Poku Edusei is a Director, Legal, National Communications Authority, that's the NCA. He will also join us. Professor Charles Godfred Aka, Associate Professor of Economics, Institute of Statistical, Social and Economic Research, ISA, and former Director, Center for Social Policy Studies, University of Ghana. He also joins us. Dr. Charles Rekubrobe, Chief Policy Analyst, Ghana Institute of Public Policy Option, GIPO. Senor Kwasi Hosi, CEO, Ghana Chamber of Bulk Oil Distributors. Dr. Theo Echampong, economist and political risk analyst, will also join us. We'll be right back.
You can't come and impose your culture on us. If you would tell us, say, the reason why you won't give some joy, you won't give honorable this, honorable that, because Because when him say Ghana Constitution, say me as a member of parliament, the American will floor knows piano. You can't hold me responsible anywhere. So if you want to use that, then you cannot be in our country. We will have to demonstrate until the foreign ministry closes down that ministry, that embassy. You can't come and sit in our country and do what you want. We are not forcing you say, pay, but you won't mean be share so. But also, what I say, members of parliament from our country cannot visit your country. We will also ensure that nobody from your country can visit our country. That's why I like Nigeria. Nigeria is very, very emphatic about that. You put a sanction, they put similar. We are sending notice to our foreign ministry. Be ready. Anybody, any embassy that thinks they can use this as a way of threatening any of our members of parliament, our foreign ministry will insist that embassy leaves, shutdowns and leaves.
I see.
Unfortunately, we are introducing into this discourse emotions and sentiments, which I think is very much unnecessary. With all the threats that are being poured into the arena.
Which threats?
Oh, people saying that we'll chase members of parliament with buttons and cudgels if they don't pass this law and so on. I think
We'll put you out.
It's not necessary. Is it the case that, and people, somebody was even saying that, oh, we should telecast the discourse so people get to know who will be voting against what and so on. It means, you see, the people, some of them, they're not even following the conduct of business in parliament. There's never been an occasion when in the consideration of any bill, we've shrouded it in secrecy. Everything is done in the open. And for those of them who are saying that, then we'll know who voted against the bill and so on and so forth. When at any stage do we vote on a bill? The only time that we take a major vote on the bill is when we pass it through what is called the second reading. It is there that the principles of the bill are elucidated on by the sponsors of the bill.
We have to have a proper, and that's actually one issue that I have with those who support gay rights. They think that it's not progressive for you to advocate against gay rights. I do not understand. I can't come to terms with that. The fact that you find it appropriate to advocate for the rights of gays and lesbians, that's not mean that I should also not have the right to advocate against that practice. And indeed, one of my earlier engagements with some high commissioners here, I made a point to them, high commissioner ambassadors, that, well, I should feel free to, our nation should also feel free to advocate against the practice of lesbians and gays.
Right, so you had Muntaka Mubarak, the MP for Asawase and the Minority Chief Whip, and then you had the Majority Leader, Oseiche Mensah Bonsu. The path that he wants the bill to take now, does it suggest to you that this bill may not go as initially thought? The sponsors, have they been rushing to crash land on Article 108? And you also had the Attorney General, Godfred Yeboah Dame, and that was long ago. He spoke on this issue. So, thank you very much, Prof, for making the time to join us on Zoom.
Thank you very much, Samson. Good morning. And yes, good morning. So great. I'm pleased that I'm on your show.
Great today. To have you. Great to have you. And Roxanne says good morning to you also. Right.
Good morning.
Right. So, Roxanne, I'd like to ask this one small question. There are people who have been asking, and I want us to focus on what's in the bill and what's in the memorandum that's been submitted. And I find, for example, that in my life as a lawyer, a little over 10 years, I haven't read a memorandum to a bill that is more than the bill itself. You have about 31 pages of work, and out of that, you have a 17 plus dedicated only to the introduction, the memorandum. That tells you that that's a difficult bill to work with, right? People are asking the question, is this the most important thing that you should be focusing on. And guess what? The weekend, and thanks to Evans Mensah for that, masterful moderation last week. I went to Amfuega, Wademahe, and when I was going, I went through Sogakope through to Ho, and the road was good. Now, returning, I had to use...
Then you did Jolo.
Right.
Jolo Peter.
That's right. That's right.
Fume.
Good, yes. So you enjoyed the mountainous and the snaky mountain area thing. Very interesting. But on my return, I used the Peki Road. I have been told about it. Right. So I saw you on the way. You were all over the place. And I saw how bad, for example, the road is. Yes. And nobody's attending to it. The way it was. Very, very terrible. Yes, you can drive for 40 minutes and you are on rough road. Your tires, everything might be in trouble. Actually, I saw one bus that had, lost its way. Yes. Okay, you saw it yourself too. Why this attention rather than the bread and butter issues that concern your constituents?
Okay, thank you very much. I know you have been monitoring me, and I know you know that my cries regarding the state of affairs on the Eastern Corridor Road has been arguably the topmost of all my work in Parliament. And no month passes without me asking questions directed at the road minister to what steps he was taking to get the contractor to return to site to deal with the road. And so after about 4 years of persistent cries, the contract had been stopped. And so what they did was they abrogated it and repackaged the whole project and gave it to a new contractor, First Sky. And so First Sky is handling the section between Askuma to Have, which is 45 kilometers. But what government has done is that from Woje to Have, which is about 6 kilometers, Cocoa Board came in because there's a lot of cocoa farmers or cocoa production activity in that area. So Cocoa Board has come in to take up that cost. So government has awarded the 39.3 kilometers to First Sky, and they're actually on site. Now, the section you complain of had a twin section between Ajokwe and Kweve, but First Sky, since returning to site or returning to continue with the project, has reshaped that, so it's more trouble now. Now, I'm informed by the engineer that from about next week, they'll grade the Kweve to Woje section. So that's where things are very terrible as we speak. What they have also done is that there used to be lots of potholes on the bitumen section between Pekia Jokwe to Askuma. They've sealed that. I used to use normal concrete to do it. In the Frankadria area. The Frankadria area. A lot of potholes. Yeah, it doesn't fall within my constituency. It falls within a Sojaman. Yes, but the question. But the question is this: why, for many years, we haven't, as a country, taken that section seriously, so that as soon as we cross the bridge, you enter that patch. And that patch stretches for about 24 kilometers to Askuma. It's not been done since I was a kid. So if you heard the question, yes, I heard the question. Actually, asking you address the specific matter of the road and its nature. Yes, but I'm saying. But why this? No, but I'm saying takes preeminence over that. But I'm answering you. So as an elected representative of the people, I can only focus on asking or demanding from government to come back and do the road. One, they've been able to return to the Eastern Corridor. The other portion, which is the Frankadria section, my brother Okujeto, I mean, that section falls between Okujeto's constituency and Esujaman. They are always filing questions. In fact, when you get to Eskuma, they're always filing questions. Yes, on that section. In fact, when you get to Eskuma, where the police barrier, that nodal point, they should get the church in these constituencies. Yes. They should get the mosques in this constituency. Yes. I mean, they should get the religious. Yes. They should get the traditional leaders to mount the sort of pressure they are beginning to mount now. Yes. And tell the politicians the politicians what they are saying now, that if you don't fix these roads permanently, we'll vote against you. I agree with you. I agree with you. And Sam, the issue of the roads is as important as it is only one of the most important is facing us as a people. It cannot be the only important thing.
The joblessness.
So, exactly.
Poverty.
Exactly. So we focus on all that. But in addition to all this, is the canker. Is the threat of the spread of this canker amongst our people. Sam, nobody can stop overspeeding. People will always overspeed. But there's a need to check overspeeding. So this bill is our speed ramp to overspeeding. This bill is our vaccine and our face masks to the spread of gayism in this country.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. As I understand, Dr. Pukwe Dusay is also joining us, and Professor Charles Godfred Aka also joins us on Zoom. Now, Prof. Techiwamenu, I'd like to take your preliminary commentary on the place of importance of this project in a poor country like ours, where people say corruption is eating us up. Those who give us aid, they tell us all the time that every year we can't account for 3 billion. That school that ought to have been built was not built because the money has gone into one individual's pocket and that person is not in jail. We had close to 112,000 girls who are supposed to be going to school, teenagers between not even underage. I mean, they are less than 16 or up to 16. And it is a crime that these people should be impregnated. That's yet they've been impregnated, and the people who impregnated them, we are not told about they facing any actions. You point to this in your memorandum.
Yes. Thank you very much, Samson, and good morning again. You were asking me to assess the relative importance.
That's right.
And for us as opponents of the bill, we believe that our advocacy is important because it safeguards and strengthens our democracy. In our memo, and I'm glad that you also pointed out that what people need to do is to read the bill and read the memos that are opposing what is in the bill. So we have set out our arguments quite well in the bill. We have raised the Article 108 unconstitutionality ground, and then we go into the bill itself and its provisions. And as you, I couldn't agree with you more what you said, the fact that more than half of the bill is spent on the memorandum. And then when you go through the bill, we are told that whilst in most bills, the interpretation clause is at the end in this bill, because it is considered necessary to put the interpretation clause at the beginning, and then you go into the actual clauses. So when you go into the actual clauses, you find that most of those clauses are repetitions of what is already in our Criminal Offences Act, with the exception that in some cases, what are misdemeanors in our Criminal Offences Act suddenly become second-degree felonies, and the punishments are doubled, which is already discriminatory, because if these identities that are being criminalized, if you happen to have one of them and you commit an offense, you can get double the penalty that quote unquote so-called ordinary citizens get. And then beyond the repetition and redundancy of many of the clauses, there is also the unconstitutionality, just the sheer unconstitutionality of many of the other provisions that are in there. So these are the grounds on which we oppose the bill. And in our own memo, we also, even the statistics that we cite, Samson, are more dire than what you have referred to about the spate of teenage pregnancy, abuse, sexual violence, so many types of violence that we would expect our honorable members to concern themselves with. So some of us were very much in favor of private members being able to bring bills, but we had hoped that they would bring bills that were in the public interest and according to the Constitution. So we're really disappointed. And in this, we see the hand of the World Congress of Families. And indeed, at least one of the sponsors of the bill has admitted as much on City FM about the role of this World Congress of Families, which suddenly now becomes the promoter of local cultures under which this bill is to be brought. Something I don't know if I have time to go into for me, the four main things that this bill, on the grounds on which this bill is founded. Do I?
Please proceed.
Yes. So there are four main grounds on which the proponents of the bill proceed. One, the first is on the ground of culture, that LGBTQ activity and related activities are not consistent with Ghanaian traditional and cultural values. The second ground is that it offends and threatens the sanctity of marriage. The third is that it is necessary to place restrictions on the basic rights of LGBT persons because rights are not absolute. And then the fourth is a public health concern. Now, if we go into these grounds that have been proposed, we find that indeed, Chapter 5 of our Constitution, which guarantees fundamental human rights, grants in Article 26(1) that every person is entitled to enjoy, practice, profess, maintain, and promote any culture, language, tradition, or religion subject to the provisions of this Constitution. Article 26(2) says all customary practices which dehumanize or are injurious to the physical and mental well-being of a person are prohibited. Further, in the directive principles of state policy, there are the cultural objectives of what the state should be. And we know that the Constitution is an aspirational document and that the directive principles are not justiciable. So under Ghana's Constitution, culture is not used to determine whether rights are allowable. Rather, culture is assessed on the basis of whether it infringes rights guaranteed by the Constitution. So the Chapter 5, which guarantees basic rights, makes no provision for the restrictions of rights on the basis of traditional Ghanaian customs, beliefs, and values. The second point I had made was about the sanctity of marriage. So when we look at Ghanaian law, LGBTQ persons are excluded from the institution of marriage. In an earlier program that I was on this week, I tried to make the distinction between sex and marriage, that sex is a private, intimate affair. Marriage is a public institution. The state has a legitimate interest in regulating marriage, in setting out the conditions under which marriage can occur. So when it comes to sex, the state's interest is in whether the two people having sex have capacity, have given consent, and also that it is private, that it does not offend public decency. Those are the three grounds. So for instance, adultery is against most people's public morality, but it is not a crime. It is not. The state does not deal with it. So if you like, the state deals with crime, the church deals with sin. And this week, so many people, including lamentably the president of the Catholic Bishops' Conference, they've been waving at us a decision of the European Court of Human Rights. It's a 2010 decision, by the way. That decision is not about the rights of people to be gay. It's about marriage. It concerned an application by two Austrian men to the European Court of Human Rights to be married. And what the court said was that it was left to the individual states to regulate marriage. So this is being bandied around allegedly to support the fact that EU Court of Human Rights does not say the gay rights are not human rights. Please read, anybody who cares. You can go to the EU Court of Human Rights site. You can go to the BBC site. It's a 2010 decision. And as recently as July this year, the European Court of Human Rights was faulting Russia for not allowing any provision in its law for consenting gay people to be married. So it just reinforces the point that I made, that the state has a legitimate interest in determining who it will allow to marry and under what conditions. It does not get into the question of sex. So that is the issue around. So it is actually bizarre that people who are not even allowed to be married under our laws are precisely the people who are supposed to be posing a threat to marriage and family life. And one of the things that's in the bill, which is really strange, is that they provide very little evidential grounds for anything that they say. Nothing. There is really no research, except, of course, the false uses that they make of the research of the Ghana AIDS Commission, and of course of the findings of the CDD Afrobarometer survey. So the third ground that I stated was that no grounds are absolute. Of course, we know that rights can be limited, but the state, the Constitution sets out the grounds under which rights can be limited. And it is also important, Samson, to state in this discussion that under Article 33(5) of the Constitution, it says that the rights, duties, declarations, and guarantees relating to the fundamental human rights and freedoms specifically mentioned in this chapter shall not be regarded as excluding others not specifically mentioned, which are considered to be inherent in a democracy and intended to secure the freedom and dignity of man. In other words, the Constitution allowed that we are a growing state and that needs may change and new rights could be formed. So in 1992, when it was being formulated, it did not pretend that it knew everything, but allowed for this dynamism. So much of the comparison that is made about the restriction of rights goes to the Vigilantism Act and the Cybersecurity Act. And it is important to distinguish that in both of these, we're talking about national security. We're talking about harms. So, and it is clear, we know the violence that characterized the 2016 and 2020 general elections. So nobody disputes the necessity for criminalizing vigilantism. So, or the Cybersecurity Act, on the grounds of national security. But the anti-gay bill provides no such public interest grounds for restricting rights to privacy, to free expression, to personal autonomy, non-discrimination, association, etc. It's interesting, at the beginning, you had the Attorney General talking about advocate against. Advocate against does not mean legislate and criminalize, okay? Now, the last thing about the public health concern, and again, so 18.1% of men who have sex with men were found to be HIV positive, which means that the almost 82% of HIV persons were heterosexuals. So it actually does not support anything on this public health thing. So all the things about how much money we spend, etc. I think that you have cataloged the litany of waste in our system. So to really focus on some people on these grounds are spurious, extremely spurious. And that is why we said that really there was nothing, that already some of the provisions, and I could go on and tell you those clauses 7, 8, 9, 10, 19, 20, are already provided by the Criminal Offences Act. But in most cases, we find that because this bill is so punitive, it goes ahead and doubles the punishment. And then we have clauses 12, 14, 15, and 16, which are patently unconstitutional.
I'll return for further elucidation on those specific provisions of the Act, but let me bring in Dr. Poku-Edusei. Now, Dr. Poku-Edusei, do you think that this project is something that we shouldn't be looking at this time? The Constitution Review Commission, 2010, 2011, 2012, when they did their work, they said that the commission finds that during its consultations, the overwhelming number of submissions received on the subject, that is homosexuality, was in favor of the non-recognition of the right to sexual orientation for homosexuals. Then they came to say that the commission finds that in any case, it will be neither necessary nor advisable for the Constitution Review Commission to attempt to deal with this complicated issue at this time. It is very probable that a proposal to give some recognition to same-sex relationships in Ghana at this stage will be condemned by a large section of the population in the country, mainly on religious and cultural grounds. On the other hand, a suggestion to introduce a provision in the Constitution expressly excluding same-sex marriages in Ghana would be clearly seen by many people in the country and outside of it as a reactionary move not worthy of a progressive state. Now, this is the conclusion. Apart from this, they also said the more advisable approach would seem to be to leave the matter for settlement by the Supreme Court in due course. If and when there is enough interest in the matter and there is a sufficiently strong feeling about the issue, those who wish to promote the idea will be able to seek an opinion from the Supreme Court, and the court will be able soberly, and in its own time, to consider the submissions put before it and issue the interpretation of the Constitution in the light of the strength of the arguments advanced. In doing so, the court may also seek to take account of the prevailing conditions and views in the country at the time. Why do you think we are here today? Doc, please unmute your mic.
Good morning to my colleagues and good morning to Ghanaians. After perusing the bill and also following the discussions from those who are in support and those who are against, I can make some few quick comments that could be very firm in actually articulating my position. The first is that when you said the Constitutional Review Commission said we should not recognize the rise of gayism and homosexualism, actually that is different from what is prevailing at this point, in which people are now going to legislate certain morals and values into our private lives. That's number one. The second aspect also is that we should not lose sight of the fact that the group with Abutu Ampao and Professor Techua Mendu and the rest who are advocating against the bill are in no way saying that they are supporters of lesbianism and gayism. That is one thing Ghanaians must understand. It doesn't mean that they will go and tell their kids that they should convert from heterosexual relationships into gayism and lesbianism. No. They are rather saying that the route you are taking is a wrong route. The third point is that if you look at the tenor of the bill, you don't need anyone to tell you that it won't meet a constitutional test going forward. and I will elaborate briefly on this, that when you get a law in which adverbs and other descriptive words are used to qualify nouns and verbs, right? It tells you there's something wrong. So the use of the word proper in the name of the law, if it becomes law after all, in itself should tell you that there's something wrong. What is proper in this world? When libertarians of Stuart Mills and other scholars have over the years established that going into people's private affairs in that nature is not the right thing to do, insofar as that doesn't impinge on the public values of the citizenry, you don't go into that private sphere. I am firmly convinced that we can't say that homosexualism and its related activities is a human right. I won't accept that. However, I will also not accept a situation in which you can also say that I'm legislating to actually antagonize, not just antagonize, in fact, infringe the rights of certain individuals who have certain orientations. That way, it will be unconstitutional, and it is so overbroad to the extent that you are now telling us that these are the proper values of our humanity. That way, you are mistaken, and I think that is where the problem is in respect of the bill. So, in sum, what I'm saying is this: that we should not misconstrue those who are against the current bill as persons who are into lesbianism and gayism. Secondly, we should not think that when we are against the practice of lesbianism, it means that we are infringing on individual rights. That is not the issue. But what infringes on the right of those persons is that you are now saying that they cannot decide to live their private lives if it doesn't come into the public sphere in any way. If someone speaks by being, I would say, liberal in saying that you can't maltreat this person, then that person is also committing a crime. That is way out of order. And in that way, I think that the law, even if it's passed in its current state, will not be able to suffice and satisfy the threshold of constitutionalism when it goes to the Supreme Court of Ghana. So let's actually be moderate in terms of how we castigate each other for taking certain entrenched positions. There's nothing proper in this kind of discourse to say that proper sexuality and human values. No, it is not. And as you have followed our cultural disposition over the years, you realize that things have changed. You have read cases in which in the past it was only females who were banished in the Provo land and which were Retano and the Koshiakoko and the rest, those kind of cases. And the courts could do nothing, as if those who were actually committing or impregnating young adolescent children or women are only the females themselves. No, but it was being done by the men, but it was only the females who were being punished. So over a period of time, we have transitioned from such strict ways of interpreting cultural values into a more liberal forms of it, so that it can be consistent with democratic values that we have decided to absorb. So we should be careful in thinking that we can legislate into other people's private lives. That way, they are human beings, and you are taking away certain things that they want to keep private into the public sphere. And that is wrong in terms of what the law is seeking to do.
Thank you. And Professor Charles Godfred Aka, I want you to commence by commenting on something I feel is important that Dr. Dusay has spoken about. You would realize that, and look, let's call a spade what it is. Anybody who has attempted to even look at the bill, the letter, the context of it, the content, and to suggest anything to be done with it is either tagged gay or paid by the gay community. Do you think this is helpful for this discussion? Fuamoni was on Metro TV the last time, and he was insisting that Akoto Ampah and the rest are wrong because they can't point to any portion of the Constitution where this kind of conduct has been legislated in the Constitution to be a right. So he was insisting that until they point out to him in the Constitution where you can find this to be a right, they should shut up. So I made a very harmless, intervention and pointed to Article 33(5), which says that the rights in our Constitution are not exhaustive, but there are other rights which are inherent in the democracy and intended to secure the dignity of human beings. And those rights are also rights, even though they are not in our Constitution. In fact, I have gone to court to prosecute a case where I stayed on a right, which is you can't find in our Constitution, and it was upheld. If you remember ROPA, Ghanaians living abroad having the right to vote in Ghana, in wherever they are and being registered there. Outrightly, I was condemned, and people begin to raise issues. And some say, where do you belong? What is this? Is this the way to have this discussion?
Thank you very much, Samson, and good morning to my co-panelists and to Ghanaians. So I will start by saying that the issue is a vexed issue, and that's not something to joke with at all. If you have followed the discussion, and let us also acknowledge that Ghana is not the first country to be discussing this. So for anybody to suggest that such an issue is not important because it's not road, or to suggest that we are now looking at people's private things, is very unfair. In 1960, the criminal code itself was looking at private issues. Sodomy is supposed to be private. But why did the criminal code, as far back as 1960, decided that it's criminal? In the US, until recently, in Switzerland, just until 2 years ago, in Europe, they have all had these laws passed to protect society. Because it's not just private. People's private actions and choices have implications on the larger community. It has collateral impact on society, on socialization, even on the way we raise children, on the public culture and public morality. So unless we are saying that, well, US, Switzerland, Britain, they just became civilized, they just became wiser, and for all these years that they have existed, for hundreds of years of democracy, they were foolish to impose laws. Even up to today, they have laws that criminalize polygamy. Is polygamy not a private issue? Why would they allow people to just marry how many wives they want to have? It's against their culture. Nobody can go to the US or to the UK and decide that they should throw away their laws against polygamy. So this is the matter that we must look at. Now, this is the first time in my research that I've seen an issue like this. No, I want you to take the CDD as a very serious organization. The Afrobarometer survey that they have been conducting, they ask people to have their say. This is not about government, it's not about the church, it's not about Muslims. Ghanaians, nationally representative sample of Ghanaians are asked, have your say about all things that affect you in Ghana, about corruption and here and there. Then they began to ask issues about tolerance. And they ask Ghanaians, how willing are you able to tolerate people from different ethnic backgrounds, people from different religion, people who are immigrants, people who have HIV/AIDS? And close to 96% of Ghanaians said, we will tolerate them. I'm likely to work with them. I don't care having them as tenants. I don't care having them as co-tenants. I don't care having them as work colleagues. When it came to the issue of LGBTQ, 93% of the Ghanaians across religion, over 90% of Muslims, about 90% of Christians, about 86% of people who don't have any religion, including atheists, they said, we do not accept that. It's against our public moral, it's against our culture, it's a deviant behavior. This is a vexed issue. So even before we came to discuss it as a bill, you already told us that in 2010, the Constitutional Review Commission, they received almost 98% of the public submissions were on this matter, that they don't like it. These are Ghanaians speaking. This is not the church. This is not Muslim. These are Ghanaians. Some of these people are atheists. They have no religion. It cuts across, when you look at the educational demographic, even those that have second, tertiary education, including myself and people like Pastor Tichomenu, Dr. Edupoku, 86% of people with tertiary education, educated people, liberal people, those you call progressive, they said they do not tolerate homosexuality. It's not just about uneducated. Those who live, both men and women, both urban and rural. Now they came back to ask the issue about you willing to work with them or to live with them. They said, we don't want to have them as a neighbor. We don't want to have them as work colleagues. They asked another question that was very interesting. They asked them that, will you report any person, whether it's your daughter, your sister, your brother, your relative, your close friend, your co-worker, or other people, if you find them committing homosexuality, will you report them to the police? And 86% of them said, if I find my daughter engaging in sodomy, in homosexuality, I will report her to the police. Which then means that this matter goes beyond some people who are just promoting hate. These are people that find this unacceptable, to the extent that even their own daughter or their own son or their own father or their own relative, their own church member, they are willing to have the law enforcement agencies to deal with them. So then that makes the matter quite serious.
Do you find that the questioning about promoting hate may have a basis from the bill that, for example, the bill equates bestiality to, LGBT activity? That's wrong, isn't it? And bestiality is already prohibited by our law.
It's not wrong. You see, the issue is the bill is seeing LGBTQ as a lifestyle choice. All the argument they were trying to make was that it was a condition they are born gays, and therefore they need a right to be protected, given the same right that are given to heterosexuals. The bill is saying, from all the evidence, from all the scientific research, it is not established that people are born gay or homosexuals. It's a choice. Therefore, somebody can decide to sleep with a dog, and it's happening somewhere in the Western countries. Somebody can decide to marry 3 wives. Somebody can decide to be a pedophile, the same way somebody can decide to be a homosexual. So again, that suggestion about being pedophile, which you seem to find being elevated in the discussion, is that also not an erroneous way to project hate against LGBTQ people? Because is LGBT being pedophilia? No, Samson, no. And I don't think it's fair to use the word promoting hate. I take exception to that. It's a question. I've read the bill.
It's a question.
Yeah, well, so
yes.
It's a question I disagree with. Right. Okay, the bill is not promoting hate. In America, until last 2 weeks in South Switzerland, many countries, they have such bills. Okay, they have such laws. The Criminal Code of 1960 was not promoting hate against sodomites. It was just saying that this is unacceptable. It's a different bill. See, let me read the sociologists, because I think some of us are anthropologists and sociologists. Just a second, because you repeat sodomy. In our law, sodomy is differentiated in 2 ways. When you commit it without the consent of the other person, you are getting into a felony. And the sanction is hefty because the person doesn't agree. But when you engage in it with somebody who consents, it's a misdemeanor. So Professor Techiamenu and her team have mentioned to you that why the inequality in the punishment, even if what you are doing will pass muster. Well, so I'm just an academic, so this is a question to ask to the proponents of the bill. But I've already argued somewhere else that it's a draft bill. Okay, we need to understand the spirit and the letter of the bill. And of course, the bill is not to muscle Parliament to pass it by all means in its current state. Almost every bill that in my life I observed, in a very few exceptional cases, that the bill will just go without any alterations or any discussion. So the Constitutional Affairs Legal Committee are going to make input. It will come to the public, the floor. They have already received over 140 public memoranda, some from legal minds, from people, intellectuals. I have sent in a memorandum. So all of these are going to reflect in some alterations, revisions. If we think the punishment is too severe, they do not agree. But some of the voices I'm hearing is that people are saying that the bill itself is totally ill-conceived, is unnecessary, and is promoting hate, and is, as Professor Dr. Adu said, Poku is talking about, is intruding into people's privacy. And what I'm saying is that if you do that, then there will be no role for government. The role of government is to provide public goods.
All right.
One of the public goods is security. One of them is public morality, to make sure democracy is to make sure that we have ethics, we have values, we have cultural uprightness. Otherwise, there's no need for us to have standard board, food and drugs board, police and institutions, so that when people are doing their private activities, it must be legitimate and it must not offend public safety, public health, public morality.
Okay.
So if your private activity, like Galam said, is going to be injurious to the common good of society, even though it is private, I think the state has right and duty to impose restrictions and to regulate that.
Great.
I think that is where we need to see it.
Great.
Can I correct something that was because it must not be allowed to go.
Okay.
When they said that 18% of the HIV/AIDS cases of men who have sex with men have HIV/AIDS, it does not lead to saying that 82% are heterosexuals. Is wrong. On the average, you know that it's taken average among the heterosexuals. Among heterosexuals, it's less than 10%. I think the national average itself is low, it's around 2-3%. But among homosexuals, it's 18%. That's what we are saying. It is the most riskier group. All over the world, in the US now, it's about 70% of men who sleep with men have HIV/AIDS. Okay.
Samson, do I get a right of rebuttal?
Yes, you will. You will at the right time. Just hold on for me. Yes. There was this bit you mentioned about the CDD report. I just needed a little clarity on it before you proceed. And the issue about the pedophiles, it has to be stated, shouldn't it, that so far in this country, we have arrested people who are pedophiles, and we have not come to a conclusion that those who do that are homosexuals. In fact, heterosexuals are the ones who have been doing it. Now, the CDD survey, the same survey found that that there is a high tolerance for wife beating among Ghanaians. High tolerance for wife beating among Ghanaians. Would you say that, therefore, going by the logic of your argument, that Ghana should have a legislation decriminalizing domestic violence?
No, Samson, I think that would be an overstretching. I didn't actually find it in the survey report.
It's there.
There's a tolerance wife beating. Of course, you have to interpret every research in its context. It depends on how the question was posed. So, for example, people are married and then they are being molested or suffering domestic violence. What is the option? The option is for them to divorce. If our cultural values and religious values and norms already frowns against divorce, then people say tolerate. To tolerate means that they approve. It means that it's where I will tolerate, I will endure, or they will find other ways of managing the situation. That is not equal to people who say that they did not actually say we reject we reject LGBTQ lifestyle in this country. It's a totally different argument.
Right.
Okay, that's what. But if I should conclude, because you quoted the Constitutional Review Commission, one of the things, very profound findings of the Constitutional Review Commission and I have to tell you that I was really disappointed with the recommendation of the Constitutional Review Commission, because to me, I think they did an injustice to us as a Ghanaians. And that's why we are here discussing this matter. I was expecting them to give a bold direction to government and to the president to already have, and the president already would have initiated this bill from the Attorney General's office, so that you don't have to wait for what the majority leader is now saying, that it should not come from private members. Because when they set up a Constitutional Review Commission to test the sensitivity and get memorandum and people's views about how the Constitution should be amended and should be reviewed, and then you have about 98% of public memos saying that we want you to do something to criminalize, to stop the influx of LGBTQ activities in the country, then they left the matter and said, well, we think that if we criminalize it, it will be seen by many people in this country and many people outside the country as being reactionary and as being not progressive. What does it mean to be progressive? Does progressive mean that you must be liberal and allow anything to go? What do they mean by it will be frowned upon by many Ghanaians? That is inconsistent with the Afrobarometer survey. 93% of Ghanaians will actually be happy to have seen laws coming from the Attorney General's office to stop this activity. It is only going to be opposed by foreigners, and that's their foreign culture, because they have now come to an enlightened age. They have now come to the age where they think they are wiser than God who created us, and they think that they are more intellectual, and they are now come to the point of reasoning, and therefore they are throwing away their own culture. Now, but when the Constitutional Review Commission was now making their final recommendation, let me read what they now said. They now said that Ghana's human rights are situated in the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. The Charter provides in the preamble that human rights must take into consideration the virtues of their Africans' historical tradition and the values of African civilization. The Charter further says that the individual who seeks his or her human rights to be protected has the responsibility to protect the social and the cultural values of the society. The individual shall also have the duty to preserve and strengthen positive African values in his relations with the other members of the society, in the spirit of tolerance, dialogue, and consultation, and in general to contribute to the promotion of the moral well-being of society. On that basis, the Constitutional Review Commission was of the view that homosexuality could arguably be an example of a situation where the desire of an individual to have sex with a person of the same sex should not be recognized, as long as that practice fails to sit with the social cultural values of the society in which the individual finds himself. That's a key, profound finding. And on that basis, I was surprised that the commission was not bold enough to recommend to the Attorney General and to the government that this is the aspirations of Ghanaians. And this particular homosexuality does not sit with our African Ghanaian cultural values as Ghanaians and as Africans.
Okay, thank you.
What we're talking about.
Thank you. Dr. Dusay had a response to that to explain to you that as far as the commission was concerned, yes, as far as the commission was concerned, the best way was this approach, rather than what you are seeking, that they should put in the constitution to, as it were, prescribe the conduct, so to speak. Yes, Prof, can I have you quickly, and then we'll have Roxanne begin with a portion where I'll let you also come in with where you intended to go originally. So what's your reaction to...
Thank you very much. I'm very surprised at what Professor Aka is saying about Switzerland. On 26 September 2021, 64% of Swiss citizens voted in a referendum to legalize same-sex marriage. I have seen his memo where he tries to establish some correlation between economic development and tolerance for same-sex relationships, and I find it spurious. In fact, as academics, when we argue, when we debate according in a logical fashion supported by facts. We do not allow our emotions to override us. I just sent a message to Professor Piaget to ask him, who was the chairman of the Constitutional Review Commission, 89% of all submissions to the CRC was on the issue of homosexuality. That's incredible. In any case, the government. Let me finish. The CRC. Let me finish.
Sorry.
We have a host.
Okay.
Yes. So the CRC report was read in its entirety by the government, issued a white paper. In any case, none of the recommendations were even implemented. And in what you read, you were talking about tolerance. In the African Charter on Human People's Rights, they also talk about individual rights. Individual rights. And the African Court of Justice has voided a number of provisions in national laws precisely on those grounds. So I really think that we should not substitute our private emotions or our religious views in making legislation.
All right.
And let me go specifically to the 18.1%. I also read the report, and I know that the two highest groups that had HIV prevalence was men having sex with men and commercial sex workers. And it was because of multiple partners. So it was not just about their orientation.
Okay.
And what is proposed in the bill will make the situation worse because it will drive people underground, as has been shown in various places. So we can take any statistic, even the CDD report, the Adfor Barometer report. At the end of it, the thing was not to legislate the intolerance of the 93% of people, but to protect the 7%. So this legislation will actually embolden. That is why yesterday we had an NDC communicator saying, stone and kill gays and lesbians in your communities. This from a party. If you go on the website of the Progressive Alliance, the NDC is a member of the Progressive Alliance, and one of its aspirations, goals, is about promoting gender and LGBTQI rights. So I would urge that the party look at its own associations so that you have a social democratic party that is now promoting this hateful legislation. So does the NDC have one face at home and another face abroad?
All right, thank you for that, and also for accurately bringing our mind to the submissions to the Constitution Review Commission, in respect of this subject matter. It's not to be taken as 80-something submissions. That is correct. Now, Roxanne.
Yes.
And I've seen you have started annotating the memorandum that the group brought. When you get to the portion where they speak about the inequity or unequal, situation, where something of, if you like, closer nature,
of close proximity.
yes, is prescribed as misdemeanor.
Yes.
And then in this bill, you say second-degree felony.
I'll deal with that.
Okay, you say second-degree felony. And you are not even tolerant of ideas to seek to improve the bill.
Okay. First of all, Samson, it is incorrect for Prof and her team to suggest that we are intolerant to other views on this matter. I mean, why are we asking for memos if we are intolerant of other views?
It does seem.
Hold on.
You have asked for memos.
No.
You have asked for memos.
Sam,
you are asked for memos.
No.
But you are livid and use language.
No.
And use language that many people. Have you heard Aikoyotu, for example? He says you guys should tone down. Make your point without insulting the others. Have you heard Prof and her team? Have you heard some of your people insult them outright?
Samson. Can I make my point?
Yes, but I'm only asking questions.
And deal with the issues they have raised. They've raised plethora of issues.
A lot of them.
I want to deal with them one after the other. It is incorrect for Prof and her team to suggest that we are not tolerant of other views on the matter. Otherwise, in consonance with parliamentary procedure, we will not be inviting memos so to take views of other things that people are saying in respect of the bill and to perhaps incorporate them where we see fit. So to that extent, that is a fallacy. It's a fallacious statement. The evidence available defeats that point.
Really?
Yes.
I disagree with you on that.
No? Yes, you may disagree. But I'm saying
I can show you something. You don't want to hear me.
No, something. There are wayside people are all over the place say all manner of things.
No wayside. Let me tell you.
Yes.
If you listen to Sam George.
Yes. What did Sam George say?
When he reacts to Akoto Ampao.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Many have criticized
I have also
that reaction.
to Akoto Ampao.
I'm not talking about yours. When he reacts to Akoto Ampao, a lawyer of such pedigree. Can I just ask the question?
No.
You asked me for a point, and I'm just making a point to you.
Question,
but you're asking me to ask you, and I'm asking you, you don't want to hear.
I'm saying the evidence available does not lend credence to that fact. So that's the point. 2. Prof says what? That in Article 33(5),
right,
the anticipated rights of these people are captured in the Constitution. She hasn't read the constitutional provision in total, into detail, as a whole. And I'll refer to that.
She read all of it.
Please.
If you have a contrary view,
please
state the view rather than say the way you have put it.
Okay. So, in 33(5),
it says the rights, duties, declarations, and guarantees relating to the fundamental human rights and freedoms specifically mentioned in this chapter shall not be regarded as excluding others.
Yes.
That's other rights.
Yes.
Not specifically mentioned.
Yes.
Which are considered to be inherent in a democracy.
Yes.
Number 1, that's a qualification.
Yes.
And intended to secure the freedom and dignity of man.
Not indignity of man.
You say something is indignity. The person tells you that you are insulting me by saying what I find to be okay with me. You say it's an indignity.
You are heckling me.
I'm not.
You are heckling me. I am saying the constitutional provision lays emphasis on dignity of man. And the dignity of man component or qualification is determined by the people who are practicing the democracy in the country.
My dignity is determined by your view? Is that what you're saying?
No, by the majority of people. And the majority of people are saying that this does not go to the dignity of man. That is the purposive interpretation to this provision. 2, she said that our constitution is supreme to our cultural practices. She's forgotten that in the same constitution, in Article 11, our customary practices are inherently part of the Constitution. You cannot detract that from the provisions in the Constitution and argue as if the Constitution is detached from the cultural practices and values of the people in this republic.
That's a different interpretation.
No, it is not.
In the hierarchy of laws, Article 11, read it.
Yes.
In the hierarchy of laws.
Yes.
Where is your cultural practices? Where does it stay?
I'll show you.
Your constitution overrides it.
No, you see, that is the mistake that we make.
It's not a mistake.
No, we think that.
Read it. Article 11. Read it.
Hold on. Article 11 is here, something.
Yeah, so read it.
Let me make this point.
Okay.
I am saying that the Constitution is a document. It's a wholesome document.
Right.
You cannot say that the provision in Article 11 can be deducted or can be minus from the interment of the entire constitutional provision. So the Constitution, incorporated in the Constitution, are customary practices and values. And if you go to Article 11(2) and 3, 11(2) says the common law of Ghana shall comprise the rules of law, generally known as the common law, the rules generally known as the doctrine of equity, and the rules of customary law, including those determined by the Superior Court of Judicature. So our courts have a role in this. Then 3, for the purposes of this article, customary law means the rules of law which by custom are applicable to particular communities in Ghana. Now let us go back to Article 11(1). What does it say? The laws of Ghana shall comprise this constitution. Now, where do you find Article 11 in the Constitution? Is it not inherent in the Constitution that has been listed as the supremest law in this country? So nobody can argue. It's as if you want to say that the human hand is not part of the human body. You can't do that. So there are components.
The provision you read,
Yes.
which says that
Yes.
the common law of Ghana
Yes.
is where you put your customary law.
Yes.
Is that it?
But,
Common law.
but that's where it is.
Yes, so common law. As
Yes,
a lawyer,
yes,
just
yes,
simple.
yes.
As a lawyer,
Yes.
what is the place of common law with legislation or constitutional provisions?
Yes, I am saying that the constitutional provisions supersede those of the common law and practices.
So you have said what I said.
No, but I'm saying that the argument should be that the common law is not detractable from the constitutional provisions or the
That's not the point she made.
The interment of the
that's not the point they are
no,
making.
she made the point.
No, that's not the point
No, she made the point.
No, that's the way I
Hold on.
understood it.
No, you can ask her. She said that the provisions in the or the effect of the constitution is supreme to our customary practices. And I'm saying that our customary
But you have just said that. You have just said that your customary laws are part of your common law. And where there is a legislation,
yes,
it overrides your common law.
Yes, but you are saying that where a legislation is in conflict of a customary practice, then those of the constitutional provision will supersede.
All right.
But they've not been able to establish that any part of the constitution is in conflict. Now, they make reference to Article 26. Is that it? The rights. Okay, I can refer to it in their memo.
Right.
Now, in their memo, they had this to say. If you go to page 9, you have been able to page the document, or paragraph 34. This is Article 18(1)(b) says as follows: all persons shall have the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and belief, which shall include academic freedom. Now, this constitutional provision is speaking to the freedom to engage in things that are legitimate. So it does not give you the freedom to engage in criminal thought. That is why we have provisions on conspiracy.
That's right.
Now, it does not give you the freedom to engage in criminal conscientization of people. The law will catch up with you. This provision does not give you the right to manifest criminal beliefs. In the same way, when we talk of freedom of association, implied in that provision is the fact that you have the right to associate yourself with lawful groups, not to associate with unlawful groups or associations.
Lawful groups doing lawful things.
Exactly. So the provisions they've captured, as it were, to anchor their argument is also gone. Now, they went back to Egyptology and karmatology.
So what you're saying here is that they shouldn't be saying it is unconstitutional and it's against the fundamental human rights of the LGBT people to criminalize their speech, their association, and things like that. You're saying
exactly.
Okay.
And again, to anchor their argument, they go far back into Egyptology and quoted some work done in 930 BC by an author, and referenced a line from that document, said that somebody said she did not have sex with a female in the
palace.
In the palace. No, it's not in the palace.
It's something like that.
Yes.
You're right.
Let me quickly.
No, I think you can go ahead and make the point.
Yes. And because of that, it appears to be the first recorded semblance of homosexuality and gayism in recorded history.
You're right.
Which is referable to a 2,300 and something BC Egyptian practices. And yet, they refer to our Act 39, our Act 29, which is the Criminal Code or Criminal and Other Offences Act, as a draconian colonial legislation. A 1960
legislation. This is what you are referring to. I never had sex with a woman in the temple.
In the temple.
Right.
Exactly. Recorded in 930 BC, referable to paintings found in a tomb in about 2,380 BC. Senior Kotuampa et al. Were comfortable to refer to that to anchor their argument. And ipso facto asked Parliament in a very condescending manner to reject the bill. They are not saying that portions of the bill should be amended. Their conclusion is that the bill should be rejected totally.
That's the conclusion.
That's the conclusion.
Yes, but they have spoken about portions where you can do things without a bill.
No, you send a memo. And I'll tackle all that. You send a memo. This is the conclusion. The last paragraph says, it's all that the bill ought with respect to be firmly rejected by the Parliamentary Select Committee on Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs and by Parliament as a whole. So they should stop saying other things that they are now saying.
No,
the memo,
in their memo. Sam, no, wait.
Sam, that
in
is
their
the
memo,
conclusion.
in their that's the conclusion. That's fair.
Yes.
But in their memo, they refer you to other things that are taken care of by your Criminal Offences Act.
I will tackle those. I'm taking them methodically. I'll come to even the unconstitutionality issues they are raising. Now, they say that if you go to the provisions in a criminal code, there's a distinction that where you engage in sodomy, when you sodomize somebody. And I want to even make this point before I go there. Again, he refers to our conduct as parliamentarians sponsoring this bill as akin to medieval Europeans who were going around hunting witches. And that's how come the expression witch hunting found its way into the English language, isn't it? Is he also aware that the word sodomy, which is part of our criminal provisions, in fact, which is a provision in our criminal law, also derives its origin from the city of Sodom, according to the biblical account in Genesis.
Sodom and Gomorrah.
No, I will not even add Gomorrah. That it's God himself destroyed the people of Sodom because they were engaged in sodomy. And so Europeans, in crafting their statutes and found men to be engaged in this, they went back to that biblical account and referenced the activity to the city of Sodom and made it an offense in criminal law. Is Senior Kotuampa aware?
Okay.
So that is also
now
about that.
Going forward.
Yes, going forward.
No, I'm being told that we have done a lot of time. Wait. Don't be in a hurry at all.
I should be in a hurry because the issues they have raised.
Wait. In Chairmanson's presentation,
yes,
he speaks to this bill will impose, a cost on the exchequer. Therefore, it should be surrendered to the Attorney General for purposes of the President presenting it in respect of
that's what I want to tackle.
108.
That's what I want to tackle.
So it looks like you may not be able to go forward from here.
No, it's that position too is not correct.
Okay.
And the incorrectness of that submission is anchored firmly in that provision itself. Sometimes the constitutional provisions, there's a way of reading them to bring clarity to it, and this is the way you do it. Article 108 says, Parliament shall not. So, techniques in interpretation, you leave all the other modifications and adjectival clause. So it says, Parliament shall not, A, proceed upon a bill, including an amendment to a bill, that in the opinion of the person presiding makes provision for any of the following. A, the imposition of taxation or the alteration of taxation otherwise than by a reduction. Or 2, the imposition of a charge on the consolidated fund or other public funds of Ghana, or the alteration of any such charge otherwise than by a reduction. This is what Che is referring to. And my position is that at the time that you attack the bill on these grounds, it's at the time that the bill had been submitted.
Okay.
All right?
So it's late in the day.
It's late. It's completely late. At all.
Are you working with the majority leadership?
Yes, we are. They held a press conference 3 or 4 days ago saying that they are in full support of the bill. So for you to say that the justice emanates from the people, and on that basis, you are in full support of the bill, and then when you leave the press conference, you come and say things like this, you are blowing hot and cold. But I'm saying
have you heard?
Hold on.
Is it
so let's deal with
it. Or who for money or somebody who says that the church is ready to pay for the costs that
I am tackling the matter.
That chairman is concerned about.
I'm in motion. I'm tackling the matter. So I'm saying at the time that you have to raise the Article 108 matter, it's long gone. The bill has been read for the first time.
Irreversible.
And referred, and it's gone. So you can't now be saying that you want to raise the matter.
But do you agree that I don't
agree. That is the second leg. That's the second leg of my submission. First of all, this is the legislation that is to prescribe a future offensive conduct. A future offensive conduct. It is not to prescribe conduct that has happened in the past. Because our jurisprudence doesn't permit that.
Retroactive legislation.
Yes. And then somebody says that, no, in the implementation of the law in the future, it will occasion a charge on the consolidated fund.
Right.
How is that? Now, when somebody commits an offense, it is the duty of the Republic. Otherwise, then there is no way. Because you see, the road traffic law has just been amended by some private members, saying that because hitherto that wasn't an offense, saying that where a marauding driver knocks or where a marauding driver is involved in an accident, and the accident and is liable for the accident and leads to the death of a fetus, he commits a crime. It used not to be so. Now, how does the implementation of this law occasion a charge on the consolidated fund? And that is my argument to them. Because a similar provision, a law has been passed that makes a certain conduct offensive.
There's a role assigned to the minister, the religious minister for religion.
Exactly.
There's a role assigned to the gender and children's protections ministry for various purposes.
Yes.
And then there'll be prosecutions.
Yes.
Yes.
So I am saying, if you read, for instance, clause 22 of the bill, we are actually making it a crime for anybody to attack, as it were, any known gay, any known person who may have been discovered to engage in this. But all the other the antagonists of the bill's antagonists have refused to pay attention to that provision.
They pay attention to it in their memorandum. They say that that's an insincere thing you have done.
How is that an insincere thing?
In any case, if anybody...
They have glossed over
if anybody,
to say that the bill is a hate bill. It's a homophobic bill.
Yeah, so here's the point. If anybody assaults anybody, what you're talking about is assault. If anybody assaults anybody, it's already a crime.
Yes, I agree. But this is a specific provision.
But you don't need it.
No,
because if you assault me, you have assaulted me.
It is in direct response to the argument that the bill, in its totality, is a homophobic bill. It's a hate bill against homosexuals. And the bill is saying, in reading the bill in totality, the bill says that where a person is identified to be a lesbian, gay, all that, and I'll come to your point. There's bestiality.
No, I'm moving on.
Okay.
I'm moving on.
Now, it's discovered to have engaged in this, and he's attacked. The person commits a crime. And yet they say that the bill that is saying that if somebody does that, commits a crime, is rather promoting hate. How is that?
Their point to you is that is assault already provided for by our law. So you don't need to provide for it.
That is not common assault. That is not common assault.
Okay.
That is a targeted assault.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. So let me go around quickly so that we take a break on this. Let me quickly just No, sorry, we can't finish.
No, you raised some matter.
We can't finish.
You said the memo is bigger than
Hold on, we can't finish. And starting with you, Dr. Edusei, where he has come to on the charge on the consolidated fund and the sort of unnecessary tokenism, as they say, about attacking somebody. What do you say about that?
I think almost every law that's passed, there could be some financial consequence to the state. But at the point of deciding whether to prosecute or not to prosecute, that is where the cost element will come in. So I think that should not be a disincentive to actually protect the public interest.
Okay.
But after listening to the discussion thus far, I am fortified in my position that we have a situation of what I call a shield and a sword situation. You know what the shield does? The traditional laws have mainly been employed as a shield to shield the public against certain practices that are not in our interest. That's why we had them in Act 29 and all the other laws. But in this case, the proper sexuality whatever law bill, which they are now pushing to pass, is actually being used as a sword, in the sense that is now injecting certain morals into our public fiber, which is not permitted to be done as they are seeking to do. That's why they are using adjectives to classify this as such. And the harshness of the rhetoric is also confirming the position that these people think that there are certain idiosyncrasies, religious orientations that we should all subscribe to. And that is way out of order. And I believe that if the event, in the likely event that the law is passed, it won't stand the test of constitutionality.
Mm. Do you take the view that it's unfair that those who may be found to commit what is being prescribed will suffer, are liable to suffer lesser sanctions than those who may promote it? You know, who may form, organize, register, promote, among other things. They are liable to 6 years, not less than 6 years, and not more than 10 years imprisonment, whilst those caught in the conduct, that is if it is passed in this form, are liable to, is it 3 to 5 years rather?
You know something, that's one aspect which is actually strange with the bill. You know, if you look at the right to free expression and the right to actually exercise your mind and think and advocate about things, that is what the Constitution guarantees. The fact that you are writing copiously about gayism and the rest at the universities will not make you an advocate or someone who should be deemed to be committing a crime. And in that way, the current bill is seeking to actually outlaw that. That is clearly a violation of the Constitution. It means that you can't actually have a fertile mind to think about things that we think Ghanaians should not themselves practice. And for the academy, that is not what it's supposed to be. You are allowed to think aloud and write about so many things, in fact, and speak gibberish, if you want to call it that way, and not be deemed to have committed an offense. That is the essence of free expression and free exercise of thought in the academia. In
some 20 seconds, what will you say about what we are told that the church is ready to foot the bill, as in the financial burden aspect of the bill?
Yeah, well, that's in a sense saying that they are converting all of us into churchgoers. And therefore, anytime the church decides to sponsor it, then we should all accept whatever values and norms they want to inject into our society. Ghana is a secular state. And the things that do not come into the public sphere should not be injected into us as a sword, but rather the society or the state should shield us from that. That is all that the state is supposed to do, other than injecting morals and values into us that way.
I almost forgot this. All of you would, who are speaking should say something about it. The embassies and their conduct. I can't imagine that an embassy will tell Suhini, a member of parliament, who has taken a letter from parliament asking for a visa, that he's not showing sufficient social ties and doesn't show sufficient income for which, when he travels, he will come back. That sounds like an insult. What should happen to that?
I don't know the other motivations that went into their decision-making processes. But you know that there's a lot of subjectivity in how they couch these refusals. But it tells you that you should also think about working in such a way that you develop your state and stay in your country.
Thank you. Now to Professor Aka, Godfred, let's hear from you on what you have to say about these attacks that are coming, that are associated with people who are sponsoring the bill or who are for the bill. And also, what do you say about those who say the threats about political, consequences for people who may show a different view to the bill? What do you say about that?
Thank you very much, Samson. The attacks are totally unnecessary, and I don't think anybody should suggest that it's because of the bill. I mean, we have had these things as taboos. And if you read, if you have read Professor Kwame Gyekye is one of the philosophers. Yeah, philosophers. I have his book called The African Cultural Values, an Introduction. On page 78, it says that most Africans would want to deny the existence of homosexual practice in traditional African societies. Homosexuality is considered taboo and would be outlawed on moral as well as social grounds, because the continuity of the family and indeed of the human species will be most seriously affected if homosexuality were practiced. The concept of artificial insemination, which could be used to bring children into a family composed of homosexual couple, is far removed from the ideas and practices of childbirth in the African society. That's Professor Kwame Gyekye. So, let nobody suggest that we are stupid. Okay, so we Africans or Ghanaians, we are not stupid. And I take exception to anybody to try to think that we don't know what we are talking about.
So what should the states be doing where it's becoming clear that these embassies are using visas as a weapon, travel as a weapon?
Well, it's unfortunate, but that's another angle of this movement, this LGBTQ movement. It's become a movement and a religion. It's cultural imperialism. Some societies, Western civilizations, want to now impose that as a culture on the whole world. And I think I'm surprised that Ghanaians will be supporting that kind of imperialism. After being a sovereign nation, having independence, we cannot from Ghana here go to the UK and ask them to legalize polygamy. Why would somebody want to use all tactics to force it upon us? We are a sovereign nation. And I've argued in my memorandum, and I think I take exception to Professor the chairman's suggestion that my economic arguments were spurious. She's an anthropologist, and I respect her.
I'm a lawyer also.
And a lawyer also. So I respect
and I understand economics, please.
Yes, but then if you understand economics,
yes,
will
please.
you show me one of these Western countries that legalized homosexuality when they were developing countries? Not a single one. Not a single one. And I'm making the argument because it has socio-economic implications. And if any country did that, it's going to have a negative consequence. It's not that they have just become wise. They have been fighting this by their laws all these years when they were a developing country. And I can show you, see, if you now look at the HIV/AIDS, for example, in 2020, we budgeted $100 million to fight HIV/AIDS. And
Most
if it is
of
well
money
known,
came from somewhere else.
no problem. And that money is coming from somewhere, which then means that we as a poor country don't even have the resources to fight HIV/AIDS. So we need somebody to be donating money. With COVID, we need people to be donating vaccines. So as a country like that, if you need, supposing this country stop giving us $100 million to fight HIV/AIDS, and it is well researched, well known from the UNAIDS themselves that homosexual practice is the greatest transmission mechanism for HIV. That is not disputable, even from the United Nations. And if this is one of the areas where HIV/AIDS is more prominent and is going to increase, to the extent that in Europe, Australia, New Zealand, Latin America, the rate is as much as 70% HIV/AIDS among the homosexual community.
Okay.
And if we now say that we should legalize it, I'm saying it has economic implications. HIV/AIDS has decimated many of the human capital in Africa.
Prof, just a perspective. I'm not sure there's been a discussion about legalization. I think that the discussion is about the criminal proscription. The other side of my question was, should the religious groups and others be saying that, be threatening the politicians with votes over this?
I think that's also unfair. But again, you should know that the members of parliament, even the president, they are there on behalf of the people, and it's government for the people.
That's
and
right.
Therefore, the aspirations of the people must be seen to be reflected. Look, recently, I lived in the UK. Recently, there began to be a discussion in the UK that they did not like to be part of the European Union. The population began to agitate because they saw the European, the immigrants from Eastern Europe coming to take their job here and there. And any responsible government needed to reflect rules and regulations that reflect the aspirations and the agitations on the ground. That's what sent them to referendum, so that they can allow the people to have a say whether they want to have Brexit or not.
All right.
And in that referendum, it was only 52% of the UK people that voted to come out, and the government respected that, and they're out.
Thank you.
So now, when you have a country where 93% of the people who voted you into power, your constituents, are saying that we don't like such a thing, and you insist on making sure that it's going to be there, whether they threaten or they don't threaten, it will definitely reflect in the elections.
Thank you.
You don't need to take them,
thank you. Thank you. And Prof, the other aspects, there are other countries that are going the way that, these sponsors are doing currently in our parliament. In Nigeria, in 2013, the bill that they submitted, which I understand was carries the same sort of punishment for those who associate with clubs or societies or organizations and so forth, except that I don't see there about, speech being criminalized. There too, the sentence is 10 years. And if you got into a marriage, same-sex marriage, you were liable to a term of 14 years imprisonment. So it does appear that within even some parts of Africa, this is the move.
Are you talking to me?
Yes, please.
Thank you very much, Samson. So I want to associate myself with many of the points that Dr. Opoku-Edusei made, and to respond to a couple of points. Last week, Honorable Sam George was purporting to tell us what we could teach as intellectuals in our classrooms, I think on this same program. This is a huge infringement of academic freedom and really a restriction on critical thought, which is the hallmark of an academic. An academic is not just somebody who teaches in a university. It's somebody who espouses critical thought and engages on the issues. In our memo, we did not make any demands. We were responding to the bill that has been put before us. Honorable Dafiamepo, I'm your senior by many years. I just want to remind you, okay, I was called to the bar in 1977. So when you call senior Akotoampa, I'll call senior men too. But in any case, I've heard you telling me what I should do with my children, which is really, really, for a member of parliament faced with a bill. I was so disappointed. But the reason why you say we use language, when you use language like recant in a bill before parliament, what is it reminiscent of? That is why we were referring to the Middle Ages, okay? So your clause 22, if the person will recant and accept treatment, then they don't go to prison. I mean, what kind of state do you live in? Are you the Taliban? Now you mentioned the Road Traffic Amendment Act. And here again, we see the hand of the World Congress of Families. We are talking about the right of unborn fetuses. Isn't that incredible? Isn't that incredible that of all the rights to be protected, it is that of unborn fetuses? Your Article 108 submission, the opinion of the person presiding. The person is a referee. This is the same person who has promised, even before the memos are considered, that the bill will be passed by the end of the year. The procedural ground can be raised at any time, even after the bill is passed. So because you are saying that it is a future, So if you don't raise it and then it imposes all these charges because you did not raise it, it becomes constitutional. No.
All right.
The issue about artificial insemination and Professor Ajechi's views. I would advise Professor Aka to go around the fertility clinics in Ghana, where a lot of artificial insemination is taking place. So this view that, you can only do certain things a certain way is old-fashioned. It does not accord with people's wishes. Not everybody wants to have children. Not everybody can have children. So what are you going to do now with women who cannot have children, men who are impotent? How do they threaten the sanctity of the family? Okay. We're not talking about legalization. We're talking about your criminalization.
All right.
And I hope you paid attention to the distinctions I made between sex and marriage.
Thank you.
What the state.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. Of course, this subject is such that
you give them second chance.
No, they do second. You have done second.
No, I haven't.
Okay, quickly.
One.
Yes.
In fact, something drug use, illicit drug use among lesbians, gay, among that group. In UK, it is 70% according to the study. In Netherlands, it is 80%. Illicit use of drugs among gays. Now, Prof says that she's made a distinction between marriage and what? The issue they raised in their memo, of all the arguments, the end product was that the bill should be rejected. They are not making any proposal to say that we should amend, for instance, the title. That's not the kind of thing they are saying.
No, they have said so.
No.
Please.
Something.
Let's be factual about it. No.
Something.
Let's be factual about it.
You see, you are heckling me. You've given me 1 minute and you are heckling me.
There's no heckling about it.
You are heckling.
If you are not accurate, accurate, I'll state it.
This is the memo. You submit a memo. When you write a paper and you draw a certain conclusion, it is based on the arguments you made.
I agree to the fact that the conclusion says that reject the bill.
So what are you saying?
Hold on.
I am basing
before you get to the conclusion, Roxanne, what you are doing is most unfair. No, that's a 28-page document.
Yes, 49 paragraphs.
And you take one paragraph and say that's all there is to it.
That's what we call it conclusion.
That I had pointed out to you. They are stating clearly that setting provisions which already exist in the criminal.
That is an academic exercise. They argue for and against within the memo. Then they concluded, they said, we urge the Parliamentary Select Committee on Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs to heed these patient and liberating words of Amwa Sechi JSC from the past. In order not to create a society where the state through legislation imposes one view of proper human sexual rights as the only acceptable one in our free republic, and where dissenting views and expressions are criminalized and expressed. What the bill envisages is the very opposite of the words freedom and justice that emblazons our coat of arms. The bill ought, with respect, to be firmly rejected by the Parliamentary Select Committee on Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs.
That is not in doubt, but you are inaccurate if you say they don't make suggestions as to specific points.
But I'm saying if you are asking something to be rejected,
have you made suggestions? We'll take a break here, we'll be right back.
If you reject something.
You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. As you know, this subject's very emotive, even where you can look at the clear, things on the paper, it will still most likely degenerate into an emotive debate. I'll share with you some of your views. And then we'll move on to the fuel discussion. I need to announce right away that the discussion on the 133 radio stations, we will take that next week. We will suspend that and take it next week, and rather look at how much further our kenke will shrink with this fuel price hikes. So some messages are coming through that I'm going to share with you. Let me start with some of them here. This one says, it is interesting that the majority leader is advocating the LGBTQ bill be surrendered to the Attorney General because it imposes cost on the government purse. Well, that's a nice way to kill the bill then. what happened to the spousal property rights bill. That bill has been sitting with these guys for a long time. They are not paying attention. You people, what's wrong? Spousal property bill. Over 35 years, we have not passed it. Of course, you know the Right to Information Act, how long it took. The sponsors should consider raising funds from the churches, mosque, and the people of Ghana. I am sure people will be willing to contribute to fund the bill. The bill may have certain challenges, but these can be addressed, and the bill passed in accordance with law. I am against LGBTQI+, and Ghanaians don't want it. It's simple. This is coming from Frederick, and Frederick is a lawyer. Okay, so a couple of you, okay, so you're not allowing the MP to talk. You don't know this work, how it goes. All right, thanks. Let me take a fuller submission of some of the questions. Okay, here, Jama Woyale says that those in leadership who are quiet over this debate and have assumed a neutral position on this LGBTQ issues are the most dangerous of all. Afuk says, if they deny you visas, retaliate by denying them too, and stop complaining. Sharp. Nyavo John says, everywhere in the world, laws are passed and enforced for the greater good of the public and not to satisfy the whims and caprices of a few minority. Majority of Ghanaians abhor the practices of these people. This thing, hence the bill must be passed. Citizen Yao says, if the church says they are ready to bear the cost, then the bill should be amended by saying the church specific names that pledge shall build prisons for the government to jail all those who breach the act, and shall bear all cost that comes with it till eternity. Yes, the church is already building prisons. Is it the Pentecost church that has built one already somewhere? Okay. Edu Jemfi David says the straw man argument that keeps coming up in the debate on this obnoxious anti-LGBTQ bill is troubling. I can't see anyone arguing against this bill saying LGBTQ rights must be legalized in Ghana. They are saying this hateful and ill thought through bill must not be passed. Proverbial Twitter, that's Kofi Amwa, says the LGBTQ advocates say who is being hateful. When laws were being passed to stop corruption, were they lovely? These two are cankers and shouldn't be tolerated. Anyone who hates it is the one who isn't objective. Right, thank you very much for your messages. Okay. I've got some more, but I can't continue. Let's now go to the question of the fuel prices that are suspected from today to go up and by 7%, and which obviously has forced the hand of government to seek to remove some of the levies that account for the high price on fuel from it. Parliament is expected to, in accordance with the Fees and Charges Act, to the President's decision to approve the price stabilization and recovery levies on petroleum products. So 2 items appear to suffer so that it will cushion people. Now, let's welcome our next set of guests joining Roxanne on this issue. Thank you very much for your time, Senor Osi. Dr. Charles Rekuburobe, thank you.
The pleasure is mine.
Great. Senor Osi is the CEO of the Chamber of Bulk Oil Distributors. Dr. Charles Rekuburobe, thank you so very much for your time, sir.
Thank you.
Great. So, Senor, try and help us understand. And Dr. Tio Champon, thank you so much.
Hello?
Great, you are on. Thank you. Senor, try and help us understand what is going on with this fuel price ritual. And it looks like we are getting to unsustainable levels as far as the increases are concerned. And it will impact in a significant way on almost everything.
Yeah, Samson, I've said on the show before, Ghana is a price taker on the world market. We are not price makers. We don't supply or produce enough oil to determine or influence the price of oil in the world. And that won't change anytime soon. So we are actually just taking the effect of the general global situation, which is also ingrained in very strong economics. We already are debating a transition from oil and gas or fossil fuels. So investments going into fossil fuels are pretty low. The main OPEC operators are very clear in their mind that they have quite a shorter lifespan as far as their ability to control and command the dynamics of the community going forward. So this is Christmas time. This is the only time that they can optimize returns. They are not boosting supplies to help impact the price downwards. So nothing much is going to change. When you look at the prices today, compared to what it was last year, it's a 110% increase on, say, the world prices for diesel. Compared to pre-COVID, it's about 18 or less than 19% increase. There's been a hit. They are going to recover. On the pump market side, today as we speak, we're still in the old, we are starting a new window, which starts today. We're looking at 39% and now going to be about 42% compared to what pump prices were last year. If you look at our price structure in Ghana, taxes account for close to 40% of our pump prices. It's going to go down a bit because what market prices have gone up, and possibly we're also going to see a reduction in the price stabilization recovery levy. There are a few things government must do, and government often loves to react. These are things they should have done years ago. We've been talking about it, but nobody listens till there's an urgency. The key thing here is your exchange rate. It's one of the ways you can influence your prices. The other one is for you to rationalize your taxes. There's a lot of inefficiency in our tax structure today. I can walk us through and show almost every inefficiency in that, in which in itself could save us some 10% savings. You also look at our market structures in itself, and you realize that we can optimize our supply chain and take hedge positions that can help us. We are a net exporter of oil, meaning we make income when we export and prices go up and we export crude. But we take a lot of stress on the downstream side when it has to do with the purchase or the distribution of petroleum products. There's a possibility of hedging against cash settlements. So if government says that, I think it will be unsustainable for us when prices go beyond $500 per metric ton, or crude prices go beyond $60 per metric ton on the downstream sides. We can actually take a hedge option. You take an option, and anytime prices go up, your counterparties will give you the money. When they give you the money, you also reduce your taxes, so you also don't lose on the tax front or the revenue part of government, while still making a big break on the upstream side. Governments have not really put in place a proper hedge program that fits a deregulated system. You take the exchange rates. The central bank, if you look at the FX today on the central bank website, it shows you something around what, 5.88 thereabout. You and I know that dollars are not 5.88 in this market, but the central bank is giving dollars at 5.88 to some people. In times of speculation like this, what you see the market pricing will be 5.25. That is what consumers are paying for fuel. But if the central bank is able to give others this 5.88, why don't we have an FX market for the oil market, so that the government from time to time can intervene and supply FX, which is being used to buy chopsticks and the kotoje, rather direct that towards oil specifically, so we can reduce the prices of fuel. That alone can reduce prices by about 4%. We haven't seen proactivity on the part of the central bank. The chamber has and the Association of Bankers have filed proposals to try and mitigate these things from time to time. We've still not had proper cooperation from the central bank. I hope that in the next few weeks we'll probably get some attention from them that can help solve this problem. Ghana can do very little. I'm going to walk you through the taxes, if I have your permission, and probably address some of the inefficiencies we have in there.
Right, we'll do so. But before that, the press release we had in the course of the week said that the price would be revised on Friday. That's yesterday. Has that happened? And are we setting of the percentage of increase now?
I'm unable to confirm whether that has happened, because where I sit, I've still not seen an act of parliament that can legitimize that yet. But I believe that in the course of time, that would really come up. My consultation with some of the oil marketing companies does not really support that fact for now. I'm pretty sure a new price would must have been circulated at midnight today. I'm yet to see that, to see if it's in there. But it's only parliament who can actually revise that tax. And unless Honorable Daffy Amako can confirm if a parliament has acted,
and we don't expect less than 7%.
Not necessarily. It's a deregulated market, so I would not want to speculate on that particular part. Prices on the world market have moved by 9%. It will not necessarily translate into a 9% increase at the pump, because price and taxes account for about 40% of it. So maybe somewhere around 6% will be something that's more practical to look at. And
the step taken by government, what impact will it bring? And as you address that, then you bring the tax component discussion to us.
It's going to save us some 14 pesewa per liter cost at the pump. That's going to be it. The price stabilization recovery levy is part of the ESLA Act levies, and it's actually meant to help fund the subsidies on premix and residual fuel oil. There's a need for us to review that entire policy on premix and residual fuel oil. It is being abused every now and then, and we actually don't need that amount of money to really service that particular sector. But I'm going to walk. Let me go back to the taxes, with your permission. We have the energy debt and recovery levy. There's very little that can be done about that, and it goes straight to the ESLA bonds that are issued through the ESLA PLs. So that is dead good. You have the road fund. The road fund is significantly committed and actually under extreme stress, dead good. The energy fund, dead good. The price stabilization and recovery levy is what government is taking off for now, because it has enough income, or possibly has adequate enough income to cover the subsidies on premix and residual fuel oil, which I think government must quickly just cap, other than keep an open-ended subsidy policy on. We have the sanitation levy. Sanitation levy is a very inefficient levy. It's an irresponsible levy in that we are actually charging a different product for a different service. We should rather be having a polluter pay system, other than asking everybody of what to pay for picking up your garbage. It's not a very responsible thing to do, in my opinion, and I've shared it with you guys before. We have the energy sector recovery levy, which is again a function of the weaknesses we have in our power sector, and we are asking petrol to pay. Are we correcting those things so that we don't have these taxes perpetual? I think that there's still a lot of work to be done on that. The SPT I won't speak about, but the price distribution and the UPPF margin, those are transportation margins. The price distribution margin is supposed to fund the cost of transporting products from one tank farm to another. The truth of the matter is that the cost at which we pay for transportation in our country is highly overpriced. That price has a lot of rent seeking in there. Every time a government comes into office, a new set of people called middlemen and agents now front transactions without traps, and now cream off about 20 to 30% on the income that's supposed to go to the transporters. The transporters don't lose money, so why are we paying an extra 30% on that? It is possible to save 25% on that particular one, as well as the UPPF. The UPPF is significantly strained because there's a lot of illegality that also goes in there. These are rooms for optimizing our tax regime. Then we have the boss margin. My friend Edwin, who is the MD of BOSS, has done a great job at BOSS, and we must really commend him for it. But what's the boss margin for? It's for the maintenance of the facilities. We are giving BOSS 500 million cedis a year. Something 500 million cedis a year. For what? For them to maintain their facilities. Then the question now arises. BOSS makes its facilities available for commercial purposes. Every single service that it renders, BOSS is paid a commercial income. It is a limited liability company. Why should we be subsidizing them to the tune of 500 million cedis? We are actually encouraging them to be inefficient. It is no wonder that they actually run trading losses in excess of $600 million, and they have to use BOSS margins to find a way to keep paying for those losses. But when those losses happen to us as a people, to individuals around that space, no losses are made. Big gains are made on the private side. So we need to optimize our tax system and make sure it's efficient. It is difficult in this country, and politicians and policymakers must realize the suffering that we really have in this country. So when we are asking people to pay a dime in taxes, we should make sure it's optimal, it's efficient, and it is in the ultimate interest of the people. What we have today leaves a lot of room to be desired.
Theo, having been gauging the expectation of what is going to happen, how do you propose we go around this? Because it doesn't look good for the ordinary person.
I think a lot of some of the points I would have made, Senor actually has alluded to, and I'll come to some of the specifics as well. But there are three key factors that go into the pricing equation. And like Senor said, the price of the product is one. So we buy it in dollars, and then when you come, you have to sell it in cedis. And then on top of that, you've got all the hefty taxes and margins that, per my estimation and what Senor is also saying, makes between 40 and 50% of the price build-up or markup. And the interesting thing is when you examine the taxes and margins, there are so many line items in there that actually don't make any sense whatsoever and needs to be rationalized. And Senor has spoken to a number of them. So that is kind of the reality that we are having to live with in terms of the price of the product, where year-to-date crude oil prices have gone up about 66%. The freight on board prices for gasoline and gas oil also between 80 and 100%. And then you do have the exchange rate as well as the taxes as well. Now, on the consumer side, this is where it gets a bit interesting because the elasticity of demand, as we say it in economics, is actually different for the separate products. So petrol, diesel, RFO, and LPG. And what you tend to actually see is that when you look at, for example, petrol, it tends to be relatively inelastic. So you can pretty much put a lot of taxes on there, and which is what governments have attempted to do in the past, and you don't see that big of a shift in terms of consumer response. You do have elastic demand rather, on the other hand, for diesel and for LPG. And my biggest concern in all of this actually has to do with LPG, because the other point Senor has spoken about, that if we're not careful, LPG prices could go up from the current 7.8 or so Ghana cedis per kilo to around 10 cedis by the end of the year. But on LPG, there's almost like a 20% tax that the government imposes on that. And I think this is where there is scope to further cushion the consumer. In my view, we can actually have that 20% tax and remove between 5 and 10% of that, and that would allow or smoothen the consumption good pattern. But importantly, this is also good for the environment. Many households, the research shows that the moment the price of LPG actually goes up, households engage in what is called fuel stacking. So you may have charcoal, you may have other biomass or fuel forms, and then you decide not to basically buy the LPG because it's expensive. And that is not good for the environment. And it also deepens or entrenches energy poverty in the country. So we have almost 2 in 10 of Ghana's population, 23%, that have just access to clean cooking fuel. So in essence, 80% of the population are still using all these charcoal and other wood fuel forms. And we need to gravitate or move them away into using cleaner forms of energy. And this is where, for me, really, if you deep dive into the data, I think there's a lot more we can do, especially on LPG, just to cushion consumers, and some of the other taxes that you have on the mainstream products, like the UPPF, I have big issues with. I think it needs to be rationalized. And then some of the other margins, like the BOS margin, where I struggle to see why we still keep pretty much subsidize a state entity that is not being generating or sufficient returns to shareholders.
Dr. Charles Rekubrobe, look, you have come to this subject too many times, and gauging the development, what do you say? Because
not just too many times. I'm actually the author of the PPF. So we started in 1989.
Okay.
We should do something immediately. I mean, when Senior spoke, I was sorry to see him gloss over the SPT. The SPT was established when oil prices collapsed. And the social contract made by the government at the time was that when prices recovered, then the SPT would no longer be necessary. But like everything else, when prices recovered, the SPT has been retained. SPT, I don't know what it is now, but it used to be around 40 or pesos or whatever it was. There's also the toll recovery levy, which was supposed to last 4 years and is now 21 years in existence. There are temporary fixes which are occasioned by disruptions in the petroleum sector, but the temporary becomes permanent fixes and they add to the cost. So I think we should really look at the SPT, given that oil prices are now $30 more than what was programmed in the budget. That gives me the other thing. Look, as Senior said, we are now a net exporting country, which means that for every extra barrel of oil that we net, we are gaining $30. We are making a lot of money in windfall profits from the rising oil prices. And for the foreseeable future, because of the supply problems, the prices will rise. I believe that all that windfall profit being made must be used to cushion and reduce the ex-refinery pump price in such a way that it doesn't automatically lead to price rises.
Okay.
I also believe that toll, debt, and SPT must be immediately removed because SPT was a specific tax, is outlived its purpose, and we shouldn't have it. Otherwise, we just simply keep adding taxes to things when most countries who are oil exporting countries actually make their people enjoy some of the benefits. In Ghana now, because we are an oil exporting country, the consumer is actually being taxed double. Because each time price goes up, the pump prices will go up. And the government will make money and will not share that money even to the consumer. So there are specific things that can be done right now, which I think should be done to ensure that there is an equilibrium between the windfall profits and the price rises.
You are in Parliament now, listening to the experts, having spoken 3 of them. Foremost people, Charles Rekubrobe has had a hand on these matters, and I don't know, as you sit in Parliament, what is it that, you know, you think about as the public get ready to face, you know, these financial difficulties? We're already in COVID, and it's not easy.
Yes, it's difficult to appreciate the approach, the policy approach of government. Government comes to Parliament and says that because we are in COVID times, approve so much money for me to intervene in businesses and sometimes in domestic affairs of people by actually transmitting money. Now they send money through legitimate means to identify groups of people who are in distress. And that's in one breath. In the other breath, or in the same breath, actually, government comes back to Parliament and increases taxes on some of these products. We fought government, but they won't listen. Then when the year is drawing to a close, government issues a release or a statement and says that I have directed or I have given approval for the suspension of taxes that Parliament has approved for me to impose. I have suspended it. And that directive is, with all due respect, unconstitutional. Because pursuant to the constitutional provision in Article 174, you ought to have come to Parliament. Because it's very clear, it has to be pure. Even if you are given the mandate to suspend, to waive and all that, the exercise of that mandate will still have to come to Parliament for pre-approval. They haven't done that. So for me and for the NDC, this is a very populist and empty move. Because the benefits won't come to the people. Where the benefit will even come, there's an anticipation of it being reinstalled.
And this is for 2 months.
And this is for 2 months. So you can't gauge government's steps in the matter as strictly imposing or bringing relief to the people. Now, and I like what Senor did. Senor took trouble to deal with the number of tax components on the price build-up. And I agree with him that sanitation levy, like you and I in environmental law, one of the cardinal principles is the polluter pays principle. I generate my own debris or debris at home. I want to go and dispose of. According to the bylaws of the assembly, they charge a small levy, and you pay. And when the container is full, it is taken away. Meanwhile, government is also levying the assemblies. So as a people, we are suffering twice. Government levies the assembly for them to pay through their common fund. There's something we call sanitation levy. But the assemblies, through the use of their IGF, internally generated funds, are also taking money from the people. Now, so he thinks that should also be struck out. Then again, he speaks of BOST. The BOST levy. Indeed, just about 2 weeks ago, it was announced that for 2020, BOST made a profit of 31 million Ghana cedis for its operations for 2020. So I am in anticipation, and gladly so, that for 2021, they may improve upon that, or they will still be profitable. So if an entity makes a profit of about $5 million for its operational year, why do you levy the rest of the people to give to that entity? So that too doesn't make sense. Because that entity has some debt there that you need to clear, so that it can find its feet. So we need to interrogate that.
Can I intervene?
Yes, do quick. Yes.
The BOST margin is so that BOST can purchase petroleum for 3 months storage. BOST is not an operating company.
Okay.
BOST is to store, and I'm telling you this because I created BOST. The margin is to make sure that we can buy and store 3 months petrol so that if there are problems, we can be able to keep the supply going. The reason why BOST is allowing its tanks to be used by the BDCs is that you don't want to store petrol in a tank for 6-7 months. So really, you use it to turn it around so that the BDC, which supply the operational stock, can then turn it around so that you don't have stop fitting around. Nobody should ever believe that boss margin is for commercial operations.
So from,
no, it is not.
So from what you are saying, that should not be a perpetual levy.
Exactly.
No, because as demand increases, the need for 3-month storage also increases in terms of volumes. You know,
I'm thinking in a very commonsensical way. You need 20,000 to get a 3-month stock. I give you the 20,000. You take tax from me to get the 20,000 to get your 3-month stock. You
but I'm saying your 20,000 is not a standing figure. It keeps changing as your demand grows.
So I keep paying.
Yes, because you must always keep the 3-month supply as a strategic stock. That will both of them set up as a Shell or a BP or a BDC. It is there as a strategic stock, as all countries store their strategic stock for a rainy day.
So help me understand again. Why don't I give you a lump sum, and then so that the contribution terminates as a point? Then you turn that money over and you use it anytime you need that strategic stock. Is that not it?
Who is going to give the money at the point? You mean the government?
You take cumulatively from what I give you, so I don't have to give you forever.
Yeah, but yes, forever implies that there's a limit to the 3-month storage. But I'm saying that it is not. As demand grows, as 4 pumps grow, I mean, in my 30-odd years in the industry, I've seen pumps, retail outlets grow from less than 1,000 to maybe 3,000 or 4,000 now. So the demand is growing. So to maintain your 3-month stock, you keep adding, you keep buying.
So let me ask this.
Okay, quickly, I am under instructions. I'll be right back. Okay. You develop it further. I'll be right back.
Okay.
You're welcome back. This Newsfile is the most authoritative news analysis platform. And Roxanne had his hand up. In fact, he was the one speaking until Dr. Charles Rekubrobe made that intervention. He still wants to come in and finish his point. And then I'll get Senor also to confirm what Dr. Charles Rekubrobe was saying. Yes.
Okay. Now, Sam, I'm a bit baffled by what Doctor said. I know that is his specialty. But if BOST operations generate profit, storage of fuel is their purpose for establishing BOST, and that is for their commercial operations. So I am struggling to appreciate that it says, oh no, the profit generated, the levy, the toll levy, the BOST levy is not for purposes of their commercial operations, and that it is for purposes of buying crude and reserving it for 3 months margin. So for me, once they are commercially viable, they are generating profit. Last year they said they generated $5 million. We should reconsider levying the people to invest in their operations. That's one. Look, fuel prices. I'm just told that fuel prices have gone up between January and now 13 times.
13 times.
13 times.
Sometimes you don't recognize that that's going on.
Because it looks infinitesimal, it looks marginal. So, but the number of increments has been 13 times this year. And that is very, very significant. And so I want Senor to come in, but my point is this. If government is going to reimpose these taxes, then like somebody said some time ago, that anticipation of death is worse than death itself. The anticipation of reimposition of the taxes is worse than imposing the taxes.
Yeah, Senor, let's hear you on this.
Okay, so first of all, my good friend and actor Dazad is quite misinformed on the structure. He actually started BOST, and that was the original idea he had. What you actually had was a strategic stock level. Okay. But under Bahrain, that was zeroed out. The LI 218086, which is the pricing LI that governs the industry today, clearly defines what the BOST margin is. Section 15, it means a margin incorporated in the buildup of petroleum prices used to cover the maintenance and operating costs of petroleum product depots and to undertake expansion programs of the depots. It has nothing to do with strategic stocks. Now, today, all the services that you have from BOST one, pipeline, barge transportation, the depot services, all of them are charged at commercial rates, just like all the private depots do. At the time when we had the bus margin, bus was not a commercial entity. And if it was going to be storing products that government was going to finance outside of the bus margin, somebody had to pay for the maintenance of these facilities. That's why we had the bus margin. But bus has moved on. It is now a fully operational and commercial entity, including trading entity. Bus leases its facilities out to the public. As a matter of fact, the NPA through policy, a policy called the zonalization policy, has actually made bus practically a monopoly in certain areas. And that actually forces a lot of volume and tank tents for bus, which is supposed to boost their income. The private depots charge about $10 for the use of their depots. Bus charges $12. The private depots from their $10 maintain their facilities, pay for the tank farm, finance them, pay their staff, and make a profit. Why can't bus do the same? When you run a pipeline and manage the pipeline paid for by the state already, we still pay bus for the use of the pipeline. Bus is a commercial entity and it does trading. And a little correction on the Honorable Dafia's side. With the profits, I mean, I start to be corrected, but I am quite confident that bus claiming it has made 30 million CD profits includes the bus margin as IGF. That tax that we all pay bus, whether you use the bus facility or not, it includes, is part of it. Your government, when it was leaving, left about $624 million in trading losses at bus. All right. The current government also added its own, and now they have had to increase bus margin to create an IGF, be paying all kinds of things. I don't think that's a responsible way of running an institution or running the policy space at all. Bus is a commercial entity. It cannot continue to tax the people unfairly, the poor cocoa seller on the street unfairly, to keep paying for its waste, when every single commercial activity of it is paid for fully by the same consumer already. And for assets that it uses, that was again paid for by the taxpayer. So that's, I'm sure Tazan may now understand that bit now. And if we had a strategic stock level, like you rightly said, government will now have to invest in the strategic stock. Bus does not need to replenish it. Those days in Tazan's time, it was okay, they needed to replenish it because nobody was using the facility. But now that you have everybody using the same facilities, the refreshing of the stock is natural. All the time, government would have bought it once and doesn't need to have it going on over and over again. So this matter to settle it. And but one last thing, I agree with Tazan on the issue that on the criticism of me skipping the SPT. It was for strategic reasons, because I don't see that argument being won anyway. But that SPT should actually rather be the vehicle for funding a hedge program that will insulate government's risk. And if the government is willing, we are more than happy at any point in time to help it. One of the immediate things that government should do is to engage the central bank with the oil sector to see how we can optimize the FX flows so that the competitive flows that the state gives to the market will be directed to sectors that have a cascading and general effect like oil.
Okay. Theo, so we will come back to this, won't we?
I mean, we've been at this in the last 5-6 years. Almost every year we end up debating this issue, and that's just the nature of things. But I think we have a fantastic opportunity to fundamentally rethink the makeup of these taxes and margins and the basis and rationale for it. One of which is the bus margin, fully aligned to what Senor has been saying, that in a fully deregulated market as we have, and with bus pretty much engaged in commercial activity, I don't really see the need for that margin, because that strategic stock argument, which used to hold place 20-30 years ago, doesn't really, is the case currently. So I genuinely think that we will be back at this argument. It's not dead. So long as petrol prices will go up, and so long as we are price takers in this equation, the arguments and the conversations would continue. But my last point really on this is that I think for consumers, especially for LPG, because that's where a lot of my concern at the moment is that we can slash the taxes on LPG by as much as half, and that would allow or smoothen the consumption, but also prevent fuel stacking.
Okay. Dr. Charles Wakurobe, do you expect that we could do better, like Theo is suggesting for LPG? We are only taking the 14 pesos per kilogram on it. Hello, Doc.
From that, look, why don't we talk about SPT? SPT came in from President Mahama because petrol prices fell. It was a specific act to correct government income. I don't want it that every time we do a temporary fix, it becomes a permanent addition to the price build-up. Nobody can justify SPT now because we are making $30 per extra barrel of oil as a net oil exporting country. I think the windfall profit must be applied to decrease the pump to consumers now, and then the SPT must be removed. There is no case. If Sonia wants to hedge, I don't think that is the reason why the SPT should be diverted from its original course, because it is putting 40-45 pesos on every liter. That's a huge cost to the consumer. And that gets translated to high transport costs because we don't have rail and metro, and that then becomes high fuel prices, high consumer costs, high KK costs. Now to buy almost 2.5
all right.
KK to be
okay.
satisfied.
Thank you so very much.